and welcome to the My Clay Co studio. My name is Carla and today we are going to be making some 3D gingerbread houses. Now I am going to be using our 3D gingerbread house cutters today, but you can 100% just template out the shapes and then cut them with a blade so that you can make your own 3D gingerbread houses for earrings and all other sorts of polymer clay creations. Let's get into it. For the first section of making a gingerbread house, we are actually going to create all of our, biscuit parts and then bake them and then construct them later and do a second bake to make sure that it all stays together. So all I've got here is my gingerbread clay, which I have it rolled out to about 1.5 mil in thickness because I am actually going to be doing a slightly smaller gingerbread house just so that I can make them into earrings. I'll be using our cutters today, but as I said, if you did want to template out and use a blade, then you can do that instead if you don't have the cutters, but this just makes it heaps easier to do it. Now I am actually wanting to make this a little bit more textured because it is gingerbread, so I've got 40 grit sandpaper here, and I'm just going to lightly roll that over the clay. Once I take that off, you can see it's a really nice texture, which will be great for our gingerbread. Now, I do want to put on this side though, I have a mermaid scale texture mat here, and I think it would look really cute as kind of roof tiles. So I'm actually going to put that over this side so I can cut out our roof sections from that. There we go, just a light texture of that. So you can see I've got my two different textures and all I have to do is cut out my pieces. All right, I've got all my biscuit pieces cut out and they look so cute. As you can see, because I'm making a pair of earrings, I want to have multiples of everything. So I've got a back, a front, and two walls, and then the two roof tiles, and I've got that doubled so that I've got two sets of earrings. So if you were going to be making these as a pair of earrings, just remember you need double of everything. Now I could have these floating as a set of earrings, but I do want to put a cookie base on the bottom, so I do have two little circles that I've just cut out separately that I'll also bake at the same time, just so that these can sit on there and we have a little bit more flexibility with how we're going to decorate it around the gingerbread house as well as on the gingerbread house. It's at this point as well that if you want to add any windows or anything like that, you should cut them out before you bake them. So I'm just going to add a couple of little windows and stuff to this before I pop them in the oven. Now I've taken one of our micro cutters and I've cut out little windows, and I'm actually going to use the excess from the window to just put it back on as like a little windowsill, and then that'll give me a little bit more flexibility when I am decorating to add a couple more cute details. Okay, I think that's all I'm going to do in terms of additional cutouts. So I'm going to pop them in the oven and then we can get to constructing. Okay, I've got all my pieces out of the oven now. They're all baked up, and you can see on the edges I've just sanded them all so that we've got nice clean sides because we are going to be sticking these all together. To stick it together, I am actually going to make a little concoction of white liquid clay because we are going to have white icing. And we're actually also going to add in bicarb soda. Now I think in the US you guys may call this baking soda. It's usually a leavening agent used in baking, but you can actually add it into polymer clay and it creates kind of like a snow texture, but not really. I would liken it to like hard royal icing that you would use when you're putting together gingerbread houses. So it's actually perfect for this application. So I just put a little bit into my liquid clay and mix it around. And we just want to try and make a paste, and then you can kind of add more liquid clay or more bicarb depending on what thickness you want, but you pretty much just want to get it to a nice workable paste. And that to me looks like a good icing. All right, let's get our pieces and start sticking it together. So I have all the pieces of one of my gingerbread houses here, along with my icing and just a little tile that I'm going to put all of this on to bake. So I'm going to start with the base of my gingerbread house. So as I said at the beginning of the video, you don't need to have a base, but I find it much easier when you do have a base, especially for this part. So all I'm going to do is grab a little bit of our icing and I'm just going to make it like a bed of snow. Okay, so I've got that little bed of snow there. So now what we can start doing is actually putting the pieces on. So I know that I want to have this pretty much in the center, but I don't mind if it's a little bit further back so that we can put some embellishments at the front. So I'm going to place my first piece down onto the back of the biscuit. And as you can see, it holds up really well. And once we get all those other pieces in, it's going to hold it up even better. So I want to make sure that I'm just putting a little bit of icing on the sides of these walls. Okay, and once I have it on both sides of the wall, it means I can put this one in now. And it's literally just like building a gingerbread house. Now liquid clay actually has a shorter baking time than your standard polymer clay. So once I've finished putting the walls together, I'm actually going to pop it in the oven to do a quick bake before I put the roof tiles on. I don't know if any of you have made actual gingerbread houses, but it can be one of the most difficult things to do, is make sure that your wall pieces are actually firmly together before you start adding the roof. Okay, so I've got my gingerbread house done. I'm just going to pop it over onto the tile and then I'm going to put it in the oven again. Now, can you put your polymer clay gingerbread house together with raw clay and then just bake it all at once? Yes, you can. However, I'll show you one of these pieces that I've done previously. You can kind of see that it warps the walls a little bit and it's not entirely perfect because you will have the weight of those walls bending your polymer clay and the roof parts as well. So it's not going to be a nice, neat little structure. So I do recommend baking your pieces before constructing them, but you can do it this way if you really don't want to work with the icing portion of this video. So while my first gingerbread house was baking, I actually got started on my second gingerbread house so that when I pull the first one out, I can put the second one in while I'm working on the roof. And I'll just keep rotating like that until I've finished my earrings. Okay, so I've got my first little gingerbread house out of the oven and he's perfectly baked. So now we can just pop the roof on so that we can pop it back in the oven to get that one done. And then that's the structure of our gingerbread house all done. So all I'm going to do is actually just pop some of this icing on the parts where my roof is going to sit, so just on the V angles, and then I can pop my roof tiles straight on that. Now where it meets in the center, I do actually like to fill that with icing as well, just so it looks like one of those little roof embellishments, but also to adhere everything together and just to cover up that big gap that we've got up the top. You could be fancy before you bake these roof pieces and actually cut that at a 45-degree angle, but I feel like it's a lot of effort when you can just pop a chunk of icing in there and make it look festive. Now I'm going to get that straight in the oven just to harden up those pieces and then we can get onto embellishing. Okay, I've got my two little gingerbread houses out of the oven. Now, before I actually start putting embellishments on, I'm just going to tidy up some of the icing bits because this is kind of like a part of the embellishments where you want to just put the icing where you think it should best go. And I'm actually going to put it along these edges to make them a little bit more pronounced. Okay, I finished icing my little gingerbread houses. Now, while the icing is wet before I put it in the oven, I've just got all my other little embellishments that I made before, and I'm just going to attach these to my gingerbread houses, and then we can do a bake. Now, to actually make these into earrings, I do need to put findings into them. So before I bake this hard icing up the top, I'm actually going to puncture it and put some eye pins in so that we don't have to worry about it after baking. Because that liquid clay paste is actually going to secure these eye pins in. All right, they're ready to bake. I had such a great time making these beautiful gingerbread house earrings with you today, and I hope that you enjoyed the video as well. If you did have any questions or comments, don't forget you can pop them down below, and of course like and subscribe if you did find the video helpful so we can keep bringing you more videos just like this. We'll see you next time.